All right, so we've got a stack of articles here
Yeah,
about this potential Qualcomm takeover of Intel.
right.
And
Big news.
I mean, this has really got the tech world buzzing.
Yeah, and it's more than just like a business story, right? This is about the
Yeah.
chips that are in everything these days.
Right. Our phones, our laptops,
Exactly.
cars,
And it's
even.
everywhere.
So we've got kind of a mix of sources here.
Yeah.
Some from the financial world, like we've got this Market Watch piece, and then
Mhm.
some more from the tech side, like Qualcomm reportedly eyes. I mean, that sounds like a spy novel or
A
something.
little bit, yeah, a little intrigue there.
Yeah.
But that's good. It gives us, kind of that Wall Street perspective, but
Yeah.
then also like what the industry insiders are thinking.
Right.
So we
Okay.
get both sides.
So to set the stage here, I mean, Intel stock has really tanked this year,
Yeah.
down like 57%.
Yeah, it's been rough.
It's like they're that, that bakery that everyone used to love,
Hmm.
and now the lines are gone and the recipes are getting a little stale.
Yeah.
And Qualcomm's over there with the cronuts and the cold brew, just, raking it in.
Yeah, they're expanding like crazy.
Yeah.
That's kind of what makes this so interesting, right?
Right.
Qualcomm, which is known for, mainly mobile chips,
Right.
thinking about absorbing this company that's been huge in PCs and servers.
Yeah. And it was Qualcomm who, at least according to one of these articles,
Hmm.
initiated the talks. So
Interesting.
what is their game here? Why do they want a piece of Intel right now? Is it just because their stock is basically on sale?
Well, I mean, there's definitely an element of that, right? Like Intel has this massive infrastructure,
Right.
the factories, the equipment
Yeah.
that Qualcomm doesn't have, and getting their hands on all that
Yeah.
could be a game changer for them.
So they're not just designing the chips anymore. They could actually make them too.
Exactly. It'd be like a fashion designer suddenly owning all the textile mills and factories.
Wow.
It gives them a level of control they don't have right now.
That's huge.
Yeah.
But there was that one quote from that expert at Gabelli Funds
Oh, yeah.
that said something like, there are more cons than pros.
Right.
What do they mean by that? What are the downsides here for Qualcomm?
Well, I mean, Intel's problems go beyond just the stock price, right?
Yeah.
They've spent a ton of money building these new factories.
Yeah, and those haven't exactly gone smoothly.
No.
Not at all. There have been delays, cost overruns, the whole 9 yards.
And they had to suspend their dividend payments, which is never a good look.
Right.
And then there are the layoffs.
Right. So Qualcomm's not just buying the good stuff.
Well, they're buying the headaches, too.
Yeah.
And turning around a company like Intel, even one with all of its assets, is a huge task.
And on top of all that, there's this whole culture clash thing
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
that one of the articles mentioned.
Yeah, Intel's known for being very kind of cutthroat,
Yeah.
And merging two big companies like this
Right.
with their own ways of doing things,
Yeah.
that can be really tough.
Yeah. I mean, is it just going to be like, do those differences work themselves out?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can blend things together and it works out great. But a lot of times it's a bumpy road. People get frustrated, misunderstandings. Sometimes people even leave.
It's like mixing oil and water, right?
Yeah. Sometimes it works, sometimes
Right.
it's a mess.
Oh, right. Antitrust. I knew we were forgetting something.
Yeah, we can't forget about that. Yeah, antitrust regulators are definitely going to be taking a close look at this.
Right. Because the last thing anyone wants is less competition.
Exactly.
Prices go up. We get fewer choices as consumers.
And innovation can stagnate too.
Right. Because if these companies know they're the only game in town, why bother pushing the envelope?
It's a valid concern, for sure.
So how do we ensure that doesn't happen? How do we keep things competitive in the tech world?
Well, that's a complex issue, but part of it is about fostering a culture of innovation even within larger companies.
Okay, so even if a company gets big, it still needs to have that drive to invent, to improve.
Exactly. It's about rewarding creativity and risk-taking, even if it doesn't always lead to immediate profits.
So it sounds like a delicate balancing act.
It is.
And speaking of balancing acts, we also touched on the whole U.S. versus China thing.
Right.
How would a Qualcomm-Intel merger play into that global tech race?
Well, it's no secret that the U.S. and China are vying for technological dominance.
Right, it's like the new space race, but with chips instead of rockets.
Exactly.
So would this merger be seen as a way for the U.S. to solidify its position,
Potentially, yeah.
like creating a national champion to go head-to-head with the big players in China?
It's definitely a possibility.
Wow. So this is about way more than just two companies merging. This is about the future of technology, global competition, the whole 9 yards.
It's a big deal.
It is. And it's a lot to wrap our heads around.
It is, but it's important to understand the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
Because these decisions have ripple effects.
Okay, so we've talked about the financial side, the technological angle, even the geopolitical implications.
Right.
But at the end of the day, what does this all mean for the average person? The person using their phone, their laptop, all powered by these chips.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, one of the biggest concerns is innovation.
Okay, so if Qualcomm and Intel merge, would that mean fewer new gadgets, slower progress?
It's a possibility, and it's something that regulators will definitely be considering.
Because we all want the next cool thing, right? The faster phone, the more powerful laptop.
Of course, and that's why competition is so important.
Okay, so innovation is one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
What else should people be thinking about?
Well, there's also the issue of compatibility.
Oh, right. Like if I buy a new Qualcomm-powered laptop,
Yeah.
will it still run all my old Intel-based software?
That's a valid concern, and it's something that often gets overlooked in these big mergers.
Because who wants to buy a brand new computer and then find out that their favorite programs won't work on it?
Exactly. It can be a real headache for consumers.
Okay, so innovation, compatibility, anything else we should add to the list?
Well, one thing that often comes up in mergers is intellectual property.
Patents, trademarks, all that good stuff.
Exactly. And Intel has a massive portfolio of patents.
Really? Like a treasure trove of tech secrets?
Pretty much, they've been around for decades, innovating in all areas of computing.
So Qualcomm wouldn't just be getting Intel's factories and products, they'd be getting their ideas too.
Exactly.
Wow, that's a lot of potential value.
It is, and it's something that Qualcomm is undoubtedly factoring into their calculations.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential upsides for Qualcomm.
Right.
But what about the downsides? I mean, we've had this global chip shortage for a while now.
Yeah, that's been a major issue.
And it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon.
No, it's a complex problem with a lot of contributing factors.
So how would a Qualcomm-Intel merger impact that whole situation?
Well, it's hard to say for sure, but it could go either way.
Okay, how so?
Well, on the one hand, a combined Qualcomm-Intel would have a lot more manufacturing capacity.
Right, so they could potentially produce more chips, which would help alleviate the shortage.
Exactly.
But on the other hand,
They would also have a lot more market power.
okay, so they could control a larger share of the global chip supply,
Exactly.
and that could give them more leverage to dictate prices.
And potentially prioritize certain customers over others.
So it's like a double-edged sword.
Got it.
A merger could either help solve the chip shortage or make it even worse.
It's too early to say for sure how it would all play out.
I'm guessing there's no easy answer to that one.
Nope. It's a complex issue with a lot of moving parts.
All right, so we've covered the financial implications, the technological landscape, even the geopolitical chess game.
Right.
But let's not forget about the human side of things.
Of course not.
What happens to the people who work at these companies if this merger goes through?
Well, that's a crucial question, and it's one that often gets lost in the shuffle.
Because mergers can mean restructuring.
Exactly.
Restructuring often means layoffs,
It's unfortunate, but it's often the reality.
especially if there's overlap between the two companies.
Right. If Qualcomm and Intel both have teams working on similar things.
There's bound to be some redundancies.
Exactly.
And then there's the whole culture clash thing we talked about earlier.
Right. Merging two different company cultures can be tricky.
It's like trying to blend oil and water.
Sometimes it works, but often it's a recipe for disaster.
So while a merger might sound good in theory,
Yeah,
in practice, it can be really tough on the employees.
it's true.
And it's something that we should all be mindful of.
That's
So before the break, we were talking about the people, the actual employees.
right. The human side of things.
Yeah, because it's easy to get lost in the billions of dollars in the stock prices.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that there are real people whose lives could be turned upside down by this.
Exactly. And it's not just the employees either, right?
Right. This goes way beyond just Qualcomm and Intel.
This could impact the entire tech landscape.
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about the future of innovation, competition.
Even geopolitics, right?
It's all connected.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
You mentioned innovation a few times,
Yeah.
and I get that a bigger company might have more resources for research and development, but
But bigger isn't always better.
right. So what's the concern there?
Well, sometimes when you have fewer companies in a market, you see less of a drive to innovate.
Because they don't have to try as hard.
Exactly. If they know they've already got the market cornered, they might just focus on squeezing out profits.
Instead of taking risks and coming up with the next big thing.
Right. And that's not good for anyone in the long run.
No. It's not. So how do we encourage these tech giants to keep pushing the boundaries?
Well, part of it is about fostering a culture of competition, even within a larger company.
Okay, so even if a company gets huge, it still needs to encourage its employees to come up with new ideas
Exactly. It's about rewarding creativity and risk-taking.
and hoping that some of those risks pay off.
Exactly.
Okay, and what about the geopolitical angle we talked about earlier?
Right, the whole US versus China thing.
Yeah, because right now it feels like those two countries are in this tech arms race.
Yeah, it's like a new Cold War, but with semiconductors instead of nukes.
And where would a Qualcomm-Intel merger fit into all of that?
Well, it could be seen as a way for the US to create a national champion.
Like a tech giant, they can go toe-to-toe with the biggest players in China. So
Exactly.
it's not just about Qualcomm and Intel anymore.
Nope, this is about global competition, technological dominance.
Wow, it's a lot to process.
It is, but it's the reality of the world we live in.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with?
I think the most important thing is to stay informed, keep asking questions.
Because this story is far from over.
Not even close. This could drag on for months, maybe even years.
And the decisions made by Qualcomm, Intel, and the government will have a ripple effect throughout the tech industry.
And beyond, this stuff impacts all of us, whether we realize it or not.
Well said. Well, on that note, I think we're going to have to leave it there for today.
Sounds good.
But this is something we'll definitely be revisiting as the story develops, so stay tuned.
Absolutely. This is one to watch.
All right, folks, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll catch you next time.